When I found my front gate lying in the ditch, I thought a drunk driver had hit it. The left post was snapped near the base, the chain was twisted into the gravel, and one hinge had been ripped clean off. The metal gate my father had installed 25 years earlier was bent like someone had pulled it down with a truck. Then I saw the tire marks. They were not from one vehicle losing control. They came straight from the HOA road, crossed the easement line, and stopped right where my gate had stood. Fresh mud was packed into the grooves. There were orange paint marks on the ground, construction flags along the fence, and a new white sign zip-tied to my broken post. Silver Ridge HOA Access Improvement. Unauthorized gates will be removed. I stood there, staring at that sign, while my coffee went cold in my hand. Behind me was my ranch. Ahead of me was the only access road Silver Ridge Estates used to reach the county highway. That road crossed a narrow strip of my land under an old recorded easement. The HOA had the right to pass through, but they did not have the right to destroy my gate. But Karen, the HOA president, thought differently. She arrived 10 minutes later, in a white SUV, dressed like she was on her way to a board meeting instead of a crime scene. She stepped over the broken gate, without even looking sorry, and told me the HOA had removed an illegal obstruction from a community access route. I asked her if she had a court order. She laughed. Then she said, "You don't get to put a ranch gate across our only road." I pointed at the county survey marker near the fence and told her the gate was on my property, protecting my livestock and equipment, and had been there long before Silver Ridge even existed. She told me times had changed. She said families lived there now. Delivery drivers used that road, school buses needed access, and realtors needed a clean entrance. My old ranch gate, according to her, was unsafe, ugly, and not approved by the HOA Architectural Committee. I told her I was not in her HOA. She smiled and said, "But our road runs through your land, so you need to cooperate." That was when I took out my phone and started recording. Karen folded her arms and admitted on camera that she had authorized the contractor to remove the gate. She said the board had voted. The gate would not be replaced, and if I tried to block the road again, the HOA would sue me for interfering with access. I did not yell. I did not threaten her, and I did not touch the contractor's equipment sitting near the road. I just asked her one simple question. "Did you read the easement?" Her face changed for half a second, because she had not. That easement gave Silver Ridge limited access across my land, but it also required the road to remain compatible with ranch operations. It allowed gates for livestock safety, prohibited damage to ranch improvements, and explicitly stated that if the easement holder damaged, widened, altered, or interfered with the grantor's property without permission, the ranch owner could suspend non-emergency access until the violation was cured. Karen thought tearing down my gate would force me to surrender. By sunset, my attorney had the deed, the easement, the video, the contractor invoice, and the security footage. By the next morning, I legally locked their only access road, and for the first time since Silver Ridge was built, Karen learned exactly what it felt like to stand on the wrong side of a gate. I did not move to the edge of Silver Ridge Estates. Silver Ridge moved to the edge of me. My family ranch had been there long before the subdivision, long before the stone entrance sign, and long before the HOA newsletter started calling the area luxury country living. My grandfather bought the original pasture when the road was nothing but caliche and weeds. My father expanded the fencing, built the cattle pens, poured the gate posts, and taught me that a gate was not decoration, it was safety. That front gate mattered. It controlled the access road that ran along the lower pasture and connected my ranch to the county highway. In the old days, the road served my family, the Parker family next door, and a few utility crews. Everybody knew the rules. Close the gate behind you, watch for cattle, do not speed, and do not cut the fence. If something breaks, fix it or call the owner. The easement was written back when neighbors still settled most things with a handshake, but my grandfather was smart enough to record it anyway. It gave the neighboring parcel access across a strip of ranch land, but it also protected the ranch. The document said the road could be used for ordinary access, but it could not be widened, altered, blocked, damaged, or changed in a way that interfered with ranch operations. Gates were explicitly allowed, as long as access was not unreasonably denied. That clause saved me later. When developers bought the Parker land and built Silver Ridge, I was not happy, but I understood the easement existed. I met with the developer during construction and told them the gate stayed, the cattle guard stayed, and the road had to remain safe for livestock and ranch equipment. They agreed in writing, installed an automatic opener, and gave me a manual override. For a few years, the arrangement worked. Then, the HOA took control. The new residents liked the ranch view, but they did not like the ranch reality. They complained about dust, they complained about cattle crossing near the road, and they complained that my tractor moved too slowly in the morning. One resident even said the gate made the neighborhood feel like a service entrance instead of a luxury community. I tried to be patient. I installed reflectors, added warning signs, and agreed to notify the HOA before large cattle movements when practical. I even paid half for gravel repair one year, even though the subdivision traffic caused most of the wear. Then Karen became HOA president. She did not want cooperation. She wanted absolute control. Her emails started with phrases like community safety and resident experience, and then they quickly became demands. She wanted the gate painted black to match the HOA fence. Then she wanted it replaced with a decorative entrance arm. Then she wanted the cattle guard removed because a resident sports car scraped near it. And then she wanted the gate left wide open during daylight hours. I told her no, not rudely, not dramatically, just no. The gate was there because livestock consistently moved through the lower pasture. It kept strangers from wandering onto my ranch, slowed down traffic, and protected the road edge from people cutting around the bend. It was part of the recorded use of that land long before Silver Ridge ever existed. Karen treated that answer like a personal insult. She began telling residents I was holding the neighborhood hostage. She said the road was their only proper access, and that one rancher should not be allowed to control the entrance to 70 homes. She conveniently left out the part where the only reason they had that entrance was because my family had granted it. That is how these fights begin. People enjoy the benefit first, then they resent the condition, and then they pretend the condition never existed. By the time my gate came down, I had already spent months warning Karen that the easement did not give her ownership. But arrogance has a way of making people skip the page they most need to read. The first official demand came in a sharp letter from the HOA management company. It said the ranch gate at the main entrance created a safety hazard, a visual obstruction, and a delay for residents, vendors, emergency vehicles, and guests. It requested that I remove the gate within 14 days and coordinate with the HOA Architectural Committee on a more suitable access design. I read it twice, just to make sure I understood the absolute absurdity of it. The HOA was asking me to submit my ranch gate to their architectural committee. I replied with the easement attached. I highlighted the section allowing gables and gates for ranch operations, highlighted the section prohibiting interference with ranch improvements, and reminded them that my parcel was completely outside their jurisdiction. I wrote that I would continue cooperating on access, but the gate would remain. Karen responded personally. She said the HOA had consulted counsel and determined that the gate was inconsistent with modern access needs. She claimed the easement's purpose was to provide reliable access to Silver Ridge, and any object interfering with that purpose could be removed. I asked for the legal opinion, but she did not send it. Instead, she began building intense pressure. Residents started posting photos of the gate online, calling it dangerous and embarrassing. Someone claimed an ambulance had been delayed, which was entirely false. Another said delivery drivers were afraid of the cattle guard, which was also false. Karen used those complaints to call an emergency board meeting, and a resident who still liked me forwarded the recording. Karen stood in the clubhouse and said the HOA could no longer allow one outdated ranch feature to jeopardize the safety and value of the community. She called my gate an unauthorized structure, stating it blocked the only civilized entrance to Silver Ridge. Then, she recommended immediate removal if I refused to cooperate. One board member asked whether the easement allowed that, but Karen simply said the HOA had broad authority to maintain access. That was not a legal answer. A week later, contractors appeared near the gate. They said they were there to inspect for replacement access improvements. I told them they could inspect from the HOA side, but could not alter anything on my property. One of them looked highly uncomfortable and said the board had already scheduled a removal. I sent Karen one final warning. I wrote that the gate was lawful, recorded, and necessary for livestock control. I warned that any damage to it would be treated as trespass, property damage, and a violation of the easement. I copied the management company, the HOA board, and my attorney. Karen replied with one line, "Your refusal has been noted." 2 mornings later, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. By the time I reached the road, the gate was already completely down. A small skid steer was parked near the cattle guard. 2 workers were loading pieces of broken metal onto a trailer. One gate post had been pulled from the ground, and the other leaned at an angle with cracked concrete around its base. My chain lay in the dirt, and the lock had been cut. I told them to stop. The contractor said the HOA had authorized removal of an obstruction in the access corridor. I told him the gate was mine, and he showed me a work order signed by Karen. Then, she arrived. She did not apologize, she did not act surprised, and she actually looked proud. She told the workers to continue clearing the entrance, stating that residents had waited long enough. She said I could send the HOA a bill if I thought I had damages, but the road would no longer be controlled by a private gate. I looked at the broken post, the cut lock, the drag marks in the gravel, and the wide-open road leading into my pasture. The problem was not just the gate. Without it, anyone driving the HOA road could swing directly onto my ranch road. Cattle could push toward the entrance, delivery drivers could miss the turn and end up near the barn. My equipment yard was entirely exposed, and my liability risk changed instantly. I told Karen that. She said I was exaggerating. Then, one of her board members zip-tied the HOA access improvement sign to my broken post. That was when I stopped talking to Karen. I turned my phone camera toward the damage and asked her if she had authorized removal of my gate. She said yes. I asked if she had my permission. She said she did not need it. I asked if she had a court order. She said the board vote was sufficient. I asked if she understood the easement allowed a suspension of traffic for unauthorized alteration or damage. She rolled her eyes and said, "Do what you think you have to do." So, I did. The first thing my attorney told me was not to replace the gate immediately. That surprised me. I wanted to fix it. I wanted the entrance secured, and I wanted the road back the way it had been, before Karen decided her board vote outranked my deed. But my attorney said the damage needed to remain completely documented until we had photos, measurements, contractor estimates, and a clean record of exactly what the HOA had done. So, I documented everything. I took wide shots of the entrance, close-ups of the broken hinge, the cut lock, the skid steer tracks, the snapped concrete, the missing post, the zip-tied sign, and the drag marks where the gate had been pulled. I recorded video from the road, showing how the open entrance now allowed direct access into my lower pasture. Then I pulled my security footage. The camera near the windmill had caught the contractor arriving at 6:12 in the morning. It showed them cutting the lock, the skid steer pushing against the gate, and one worker hooking a chain to the post, pulling until the concrete cracked. It showed Karen arriving before the job was finished and pointing directly toward the cattle guard. There was no mystery, no storm damage, and no accident. They had intentionally destroyed it. I saved the footage in 3 places. Then, I opened the deed folder. The easement was even stronger than I remembered. It explicitly stated that gates, cattle guards, and ranch safety improvements existing at the time of residential development could remain, provided access devices were supplied. It strictly prohibited the benefiting party from removing or altering improvements without written consent, and required the easement holder to avoid any interference with livestock operations. It allowed full recovery of damages and attorney fees, and most importantly, it allowed a temporary suspension of non-emergency easement use if the benefiting party materially damaged or altered ranch access improvements and failed to cure after notice. That was the key, the cure. The document gave them a definitive chance to fix what they broke. If they refused, their access could be suspended until the violation was cured. My attorney drafted a notice that afternoon. It demanded an immediate acknowledgement of wrongdoing, full payment for gate replacement, restoration of the posts, removal of the HOA sign, written assurance that no further alterations would occur, and temporary safety controls until the gate was rebuilt. It gave the HOA 24 hours to cure or agree to a cure. Karen responded in less than an hour. She said the HOA rejected my demand, the gate removal was completely lawful, and any attempt to restrict Silver Ridge access would result in emergency legal action. She also stated that the HOA would not pay for replacing an unauthorized obstruction. My attorney read that email and said, she just refused to cure in writing. The next morning, we filed the formal notice. A recorded notice of easement default was filed with the county. Copies went to the HOA, the management company, their insurance carrier, the sheriff's office, the fire marshal, the county road office, the developer who still owned a few lots, the trash service, major delivery carriers, and the school district transportation department. We coordinated emergency access first because I was not trying to endanger residents. Fire, ambulance, law enforcement, and necessary emergency services would be allowed through, but ordinary HOA traffic, vendors, deliveries, contractors, realtors, and resident convenience access through my land would be completely suspended until the HOA cured the violation. Then, we placed a temporary legal barrier on the section of road that crossed my parcel. It was not hidden or dangerous. It had reflective markers, a printed notice, and my attorney's contact information. Easement access suspended due to unauthorized gate removal. Emergency access coordinated. No HOA through traffic until cured. By noon, Silver Ridge was in complete chaos. A moving truck could not get in. A landscaping crew turned around. A package truck stopped at the barrier, and a realtor with out-of-town buyers stood near the entrance waving her arms in a panic. Karen arrived furious. She demanded I remove the barrier, claiming I was trapping families, and stating that the HOA would have me arrested. I told her the sheriff already had the documents. Then, I pointed at the broken gate lying beside the ditch and said, "You were given a chance to fix it." For once, she did not have a clipboard answer ready. Karen tried to turn the neighborhood against me before the facts could catch up. Her first blast email said a hostile ranch owner had illegally blocked the only access road to Silver Ridge after the HOA removed an unsafe obstruction. She wrote that the board was pursuing immediate remedies and that residents should document all delays, expenses, and inconvenience. It sounded incredibly serious, but it also left out almost everything that mattered. So, my attorney sent a response directly to the HOA's counsel, with copies to the board and their insurance carrier. Attached were the easement, the gate clause, the damage photos, the security footage stills, Karen's signed work order, my warning email, her written refusal to cure, and the recorded notice of default. After that, the HOA's tone completely changed. Karen still sounded angry, but their attorney sounded deeply worried. The legal problem was simple. The HOA had access through my land solely because the easement allowed it. That access was not unlimited ownership. It was conditional use. They could pass, they could maintain the road, and they could coordinate gate access, but they could not destroy ranch improvements because they disliked them. The gate was not unauthorized. It was specifically contemplated by the easement and by the development agreement from when Silver Ridge was built. The developer had accepted the gate, and the HOA inherited that arrangement. Karen did not get to erase it just because the community wanted a prettier entrance. The second problem was the footage. Karen had no way to deny what happened. The video clearly showed the contractor cutting the lock, pulling the post, bending the gate, and removing the improvement. It showed Karen present and directing the entire activity, and it showed the HOA sign being attached afterward. The third problem was her explicit refusal to cure. If she had immediately agreed to replace the gate and restore access controls, the dispute might have stayed small. Instead, she put in writing that the gate was unauthorized and the HOA would not pay. That activated the exact remedy written into the recorded document: temporary suspension until cure, written notice given, county records updated, emergency access preserved, and absolutely no secret blockades or violence. The sheriff's office confirmed they would not remove the barrier without a court order because it was on my property and tied to a civil easement dispute. The county road department confirmed the road was private, and title records confirmed Silver Ridge's access depended entirely on the recorded easement. Then, the service problems began to hit heavily. Trash pickup could not use the route, and some delivery companies refused to enter through the longer secondary construction access because it was not approved for regular neighborhood service. A resident's furniture delivery was delayed, a moving truck charged extra, and a realtor canceled 2 major showings because buyers did not want to deal with an access dispute. Residents who had completely ignored Karen's fight with me suddenly cared very much. They began asking for the actual document, and someone posted the recorded easement in the neighborhood group. Within an hour, people were highlighting the exact clause my attorney had highlighted: no obstruction, no restriction, no delay, and temporary suspension if default was not cured. Then, my videos surfaced. Karen at the blocked gate, Karen saying the HOA managed the road now, the private property sign across my entrance, the board member saying ranch access had been suspended, my veterinarian waiting outside the gate, my hay delivery delayed. The residents saw what she had done, not what she claimed she had done, but what she had actually done. Karen tried to argue that the easement was outdated because the area had changed from rural to residential. My attorney responded with one sentence: development around an easement does not erase the easement. She tried to argue that safety concerns justified the restrictions, but we responded that safety procedures could not eliminate the grantor's access, and that she had never proposed reasonable coordination. She had simply imposed control. Then, the developer got involved. They still owned 3 unsold lots inside Silver Ridge, and one buyer was scheduled to close that week. Their attorney sent the HOA a sharp letter saying the access dispute threatened sales and that the developer had never authorized the destruction of ranch improvements. Karen had not only angered me, she had scared the money. Then, the insurance carrier asked for all documents related to the gate removal: board emails, contractor invoices, meeting minutes, and the explicit warnings I sent before the damage. Once the insurance company saw that Karen had been warned in writing and proceeded anyway, the HOA could no longer treat this like a simple access disagreement. It was property damage, easement interference, and potential trespass. Karen still tried one more move, filing a police complaint saying I had unlawfully blocked a residential community. A deputy came out, looked at the barrier, looked at the recorded notice, looked at the easement, and then asked Karen whether she had a court order. She did not. He told her it was a civil matter and advised everyone to stay calm. Karen looked like she wanted to explode, but the power had completely shifted. She had destroyed the gate because she thought physical control would win. Now, the road was closed because the document she ignored said it could be. The emergency HOA meeting was held in the Silver Ridge clubhouse 2 nights later. I did not want to go, as I had no interest in standing in a room full of people who had spent the last 48 hours calling me selfish online. But my attorney said the residents needed to hear the truth before Karen turned the dispute into a neighborhood myth. So, I went. The clubhouse was packed. People stood along the walls, and a few looked ready to yell before the meeting even began. Karen sat at the front table with 2 board members and the HOA attorney, keeping her chin raised like she was about to give a speech that would fix everything. It did not. She opened by saying, Silver Ridge's only road had been blocked by a neighboring landowner after the HOA took necessary action to remove an unsafe gate. Then, the HOA attorney interrupted her, confirming that the access road crossed my property under a recorded easement, that the easement contained explicit language about gates and ranch operations, and that access had been suspended under a disputed remedy clause. A man in the second row raised his hand and asked whether the HOA had removed the gate before or after getting a court order. The attorney paused, then he admitted there was no court order. The room completely changed. My attorney was allowed to present the ranch owner's position. He put the easement on the screen first, the document, not the damage photos. He read the gate clause, the no alteration clause, and the suspension clause. Then he showed my warning email sent before the removal, Karen's signed work order, the security footage stills, the broken gate, and the explicit refusal to cure. The timeline insulted her enough. A resident asked Karen if she had read the easement before authorizing the contractor. She said the board had reviewed access concerns. The resident asked again if she had read the easement. Karen said she had relied on the HOA's authority to maintain safe roads. That was not an answer. Then, the developer's representative stood up. He said the access dispute had already delayed one closing and threatened future sales, strongly urging an immediate cure. The fire marshal spoke next, confirming emergency access had been properly coordinated, which completely undercut Karen's emotional claim that I was endangering families. The sheriff's deputy confirmed his office considered it a civil easement dispute and would not force a removal without a court order. By then, residents were no longer looking at me. They were looking directly at Karen. One woman stood up and asked why she had to pay extra moving fees because the HOA destroyed a gate it had no right to touch. Another asked whether HOA insurance would cover intentional property damage after a written warning. An older man in the back said, "We had access because of his easement. Why would you attack the one thing our access depends on?" That sentence landed hard. The HOA attorney requested a short recess. When they came back, the board voted to authorize immediate settlement discussions and full restoration. Karen voted no, but the other members completely outvoted her. The next morning, the contractor who tore down the gate was back. This time, he was there to rebuild it. The new gate was far stronger than the old one. The engineer who inspected the post damage said the original concrete had been compromised, so the replacement needed to meet current heavy load standards. The HOA paid for new steel posts, a reinforced gate, a new opener, a manual emergency override, reflective ranch signage, and a protected keypad system that gave me full control for ranch operations. They also paid for the cut lock, the damaged chain, grading repairs near the cattle guard, full attorney fees, filing fees, and the cost of temporary livestock fencing I had installed while the gate was down. The correction agreement was formally recorded. It explicitly stated that the HOA did not own the road. It had easement access only, and it could not remove, alter, disable, lock open, block, redesign, or replace any ranch gate, cattle guard, fence, sign, or safety feature on my property without written consent. It also confirmed that emergency access would remain coordinated, but ordinary HOA convenience did not override my ranch rights. The road reopened after the gate was completely rebuilt, tested, and the correction agreement was signed, not a single second before. My attorney made them test it with my truck, my stock trailer, and my hay supplier before we considered the violation officially cured. A week later, Silver Ridge held a special election. Karen tried to defend herself, saying she had acted to protect residents. But an older resident stood up and said, "You blocked the one person the document specifically told you not to block." That ended her leadership, and Karen was voted out as HOA president that night. 2 board members resigned within a month. The HOA hired a new management company, and they created a strict policy requiring independent legal review before touching anything tied to easements, boundaries, drainage, or utilities. Life settled down after that. The gate opens when I need it, it closes behind me, my cattle stay where they belong, and delivery trucks still reach Silver Ridge. The road works exactly the way it was supposed to work before Karen decided her control mattered more than the document. I added a clear sign near the keypad, "Recorded Ranch Easement Gate, protected by agreement, do not alter." It is plain, clear, and apparently necessary. Sometimes people ask if I felt bad locking their only access road. The honest answer is no. I felt bad for the residents who were inconvenienced by Karen's arrogance, but I did not feel bad for enforcing the exact remedy written into the easement after the HOA ignored every warning and destroyed my property. Rights mean absolutely nothing if you are afraid to use them. A gate is not always just a gate. Sometimes it is the definitive line between permission and ownership, between cooperation and unlawful control. I did not win because I was louder. I won because I kept the deed, read the easement, saved the emails, recorded the gate, gave written notice, and followed the remedy exactly the way the document allowed. So, if an HOA, neighbor, or contractor ever destroys your property and calls it progress, do not meet them with rage first. Meet them with records. Read the deed, read the easement, find the cure clause, save the proof, and give formal written notice. Enforce your rights in a way that is clean, legal, and impossible to spin. Karen thought tearing down my gate would open the road forever. Instead, it closed the only road her community depended on. Not because I blocked them out of spite, but because the paper they ignored explicitly said I could. If this story made you think of a property line, an access road, a gate, or an HOA that cared more about appearances than legal records, leave your thoughts in the comments, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and stay subscribed for more stories where patience, paperwork, and property lines make the right people pay.